Oh dear. We're starting. I forget exactly who we were talking to. I think we were in anyway. But we gotta look at those extravagant bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim, shady goings-on. This one looks like a king's attire. A king? I've always dreamt of being a king. Oh, I think it'd be more suited to a feudal lord. Daimyo or such like. With a Chanmeg top knot, every Japanese man wishes he had a Chanmage.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. Oh, you'd look wonderful with one. You already have a sword. Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a Chanmage and a sword?
Is that what Ouchie originally had until we chopped it?
Well, I was on this.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure that's not what it was. Although, I don't know, maybe it was.
What are you talking about? Special hairdo. Have we talked to everybody you're supposed to?
I'm not 100%. I think maybe? Yeah. One of the teacups that Mr. Shamspear and his guests drank from last night. But don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's bitter poison inside. I'm not planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So one was Mr. Shamspear's, and the other must be the cup that Mr. Natsumi was drinking from. But Soseki-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later. The pair of teacups has been entered into the courtroom. Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
She just Googled what the term meant.
It is the same hairstyle that Ouchie had.
Yes, indeed. This is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it? Where does the audience sit, though, for the nightly Shakespeare performances? Actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruhodo, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office. What? Then you could practice your art every single day. I'll think about it, if you promise to don a beard and play the role of the judge. Well, if that would help you achieve your goal. This I have to see. Aww. This is a gas well light, isn't it? It must be connected to a gas pipe in the wall. Gas lights, a gas stove. London really is a city of gas. Now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb had no fire on the top. There you was drinking. Yes, unlike the other one, the inside of the cup is completely clean. I suppose he must have drunk the contents before the tea had a chance to leave a mark. I always gulp it down, too. Sorry, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, if you just sip it little by little, it goes cold. Clearly, I shall have to instruct you in the proper way to take tea. Right. Okay. One glass and bottle, and both of them are cracked. Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter? Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all. Prosecutor Lord Von Zeeks? Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses. I was thinking it's a waste and that he should donate some to the needy.
That is true.
You can suggest it next time we meet. Did he say in that last game, that he didn't do any case, since the Garrideb case, but he took that last one just so he could face Naruhodo again?
He did say that he wanted to lock swords with him again.
Does that mean that possibly there's going to be another prosecutor in this one?
I don't know.
I wonder. Alright. Okay, so we can go to Briar Road, the Garrideb's prison. I think we wanted to say the Garrideb's.
So that's just upstairs.
Yeah, so let's go there. Here we are again at the eccentric landlord's eccentric top-floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garadev's the one who discovered the incident this morning, don't forget. Ah, you chaps, eh? Yes, good morning, sir. Thank you for your cooperation in court yesterday. It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garadev as anyone, really. Came straight back here after all that business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more Bali nonsense this morning. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garadev? Yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room. Those were exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? Okay. This morning's incident, Mr. Shamspear, yesterday's events.
Let's ask him a little bit about our victim.
Alright. The victim's name is Mr. Shamspear, I believe. Is that right? Yes, William Shamspear took the ground floor room 3 months ago now. And how would you describe him? In a word, destitute. Destitute? Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose. So hard to choose which category Soseki-san would fall into. Mr. Naruhodo, that's a little rude. He was doing research as well. Research into what? Shakespeare, of course, Shakespeare. Read a few plays of the old bard myself, you know. Romeo and Hamlet and all that. Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's known as Sao in Japanese, as you know, and many of his works have already been translated. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though. Someone was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsumi is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamspear would have had much in common. Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo, really, how rude. Let's ask about yesterday's events, and then we'll go into the incident. After Mr. Natsumi's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning? Well now, it must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily as I remember, and it was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at the time. And Mr. Garrett had noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose. Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shamspear got back. And the trap was up until past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there. Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything alright, Mr. Sato?
How do you know he was up past midnight?
Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange, that's all. Mr. Garadev, you were up here in your room all evening, if I have understood correctly. Not a big fan of stairs, not with this blasted leg. Then, how is it that you seem to know the precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean? Ah, that's a very good point. I can't imagine that you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants, is that it? I say, I know what you're thinking. It's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants, why would I? Then how did you know, Mr. Garadev? It's the gas woman. The gas tells me everything. The gas? Speaking gas, what on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything? Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the buildings by pipes. Yes, I've more or less worked that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside. And the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too. Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen? Well, obviously the room would get brighter. Exactly, but at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment. What? They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it? That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, mightn't it? Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable. Jolly good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out. Barely got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here, and they glow brighter in the rest of the house. Ah, right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere. You've got it. Oh, of course, because when people come back home in the evening, and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires. Clever. In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it use slightly different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the whole house. Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garrett. Absolutely fascinating. Oh well, nothing to it, really. I can't really see that's going to help us with the case either. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garrett was so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than idle curiosity. It must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened. Ah, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning he still hadn't lit the gas. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no bally answer. And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door? Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course. Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? The man could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning. Well, you know, better to be safe than sorry and all that. Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation indeed that you found on the far side of the door. Let's see. Mr. Garrett, does that mean everything? Do you recognize this part of the envelope? Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to help us with much.
Anything.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe later, but... Freddy really looked at everything in his room from the last case. Yeah. Okay.
She said she was ready to check out, right?
Yeah. That must be a bag of Miss Green's personal belongings. She would have been brought directly here after she was found stabbed on the pavement, though. I expect a friend or family member probably brought some things for her. Alright, then let's see what's inside. A change of clothes, no doubt, and... No, Mr. Naruhodo, you must never scrutinize a young maiden's belongings. For the young maiden might have chocolates or biscuits or caramel.
It says do not feed at the end of her bed.
That's
mean.
I know, that's very mean. Let's see. Did we do everything here? As we've seen from the outside, the window is completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax that Britons had to pay. What strange things they use to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they have on the property, it's extraordinary. It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax. Oh, what is it, Mrs. Sato? If you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose. Oh yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them in just here. Was it Mr. Shamspear who did it, I wonder, being the lodger renting this room? Oh, look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside there's a little ledge, and there's something on it. What outside? Brr, it's so cold outside you can feel it through this gap. It did snow all last night, it would be cold. But more importantly, what is on the ledge out there? Are those snow-covered lumps? It's more bars of soap! So, what are bars of soap doing lined up on the ledge outside the window? I have no idea. A pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window? I think perhaps we should take one. There are two, after all. Oh dear, I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. Ah, do you see in the middle there? There's a patch that's a different color. It's sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose, only in Great Britain. It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's probably a very expensive brand. Expensive? Then what's it doing in this ramshackle old room? There we go. We were missing that. Looks like you're having a good snoop around, eh? Inspector Gregson, back so soon? After I threw the little Japanese fella in the clink, I went and reported this to the investigation division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we better be leaving then. Poor Mr. Natsumi must be feeling very low being back in a cell again so soon. I'm sure. Whoa! We should probably go and... What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo?
I saw the fort drop it.
Yeah. Ah, that is kind of creepy. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player. The struts, that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Now, how soundeth the next part? It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Indeed. Oh, happy day. Whoa, 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 whoa. Walking Dead? Oh my god, look how he's bent and all. The fella isn't dead at all? What was that nonsense he was saying, though? I think, yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. A soliloquy from Act 5, Scene 5. Shakespeare. And so it was that the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, came back to life. The man had indeed been poisoned. It transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken by emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment. Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime, whatever that was now.
So he wasn't pretending, he really was poisoned.
Looks like.
Okay.
So, he was poisoned, but he didn't die. This is the second crime here where the person didn't die. In this very area.
Talk to them.
That's good, though. The guy didn't die. That's a little creepy, though. Whatever do you think will happen now? Good question. What a strange situation for Mr. Natsumi. Arrested for murder, but then the victim comes back to life? I think perhaps the victim was never dead in the first place. It seems very likely that Mr. Shakespeare did consume poison, as we deduced. But was it an accident, attempted suicide, or attempted murder? Until the truth can be established, I imagine the police will keep Mr. Natsumi in custody. I suppose so. Let's hope it doesn't come to anything more than a night in the cells. Oh, what's this? What's that man doing over there? He looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings. Wasn't he the guy who was arguing with the Shakespeare guy, Shamspeare? Something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Excuse me, could we have a word? Yeah, I think it's the same guy. Ah. He just ran off. I feel sure that I've seen that man somewhere before. Where was it? Well, I do too, but I don't remember. Well, we've done as much investigating here as we can, I think. Perhaps we ought to go to the prison and speak with Mr. Natsumi again. Good idea. Unless we want to look at the other, I don't know. The exception of the top floor, all the windows are bricked up. Yes, because of no window tax. In order to pay less tax, poor members filled in many of their windows. Tax has been abolished. Unfortunately, it would appear the residents of this district can't afford to pay half the work done. It's a sad state of affairs, especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in very cheap accommodation. It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that. Alright. Good one. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Natsumi, have the police finished questioning you now? Welcome, student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Oh, yes? What is he? Tell me. Is he a ghost? Is he here to haunt me? Let me guess, you're talking about Mr. Sholmes? He actually calls himself a great detective, Mr. Natsumi, not a ghost. But his diabolic deductions, they're not of this world. They've left me. Ah, cursed. I'm cursed, I tell you. Well, that sort of hurts. Where credit is due, Mr. Naruhodo. You were heavily involved in the deduction, too. Yes, moving on. We have some wonderful news. Oh? The victim that we all thought was dead has come back to life again. Now, in the absolutely worst case, you can only be tried for attempted murder. That's great, isn't it, Mr. Natsume? It's terrible. Oh? I'm stuck in this cell, suffering for some silly wrong end of the stick. You did it, didn't you? Confess, you're a killer. Why the mustache? Constant questions. I'm sorry to hear that. Ah, that selfish shyster. Make up your own mind. Are you dead or alive? If you were going to come back to life, why bother dying? Wickedly, wishy-washy William. Well, it seems likely that Mr. Shamspeare was never actually dead in the first place. Ah, yes, that might make sense, and I'm pleased that he's alive, of course. Our lively debate last night was much fun. I'd be sad to think it was our last. Oh, oops. Mr. Natsume, does that mean that you did see the victim last night? You met with Mr. Shamspeare, did you? I'm not saying another word. I demand to have a lawyer present. Who do you think I am? Please, Mr. Natsume, we need to hear your side of the story. Why am I cursed like this?
I want to know all about it.
Ah. So let's ask what happened. Can you tell us exactly what happened last night then, Mr. Natsume? There's nothing to tell. But, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, I'm eternally grateful to you for helping with that accursed case yesterday. The case that saw poor Miss Green hospitalized after she ended up with a knife in her back. It's hard to believe that was only yesterday. After the trial was over, I trudged my weary way back to my lowly lodgings. And that evening at 9:30, it must have been, I visited Mr. Shamspeare. So you did go to the victim's room then? As we feared. I didn't do anything wrong. I've never been to his room before. It was the first time. Then what made you decide to go? I bumped into him when I arrived back at the house. We got chatting and it developed into a discussion. But he had to go out, so I bade him farewell. That ties in with what Mr. Garrett said. The The victim went out and came back after 8. We met again later that evening, at around 9 or just after, when I took him some nice tea I'd brewed as a gift. So it was you who brought the tea that had clearly been drunk at the scene, then. And I suppose you were discussing the works of Shakespeare, were you? Yes, that's right, that's exactly right. Romeo and Juliet, who was the stronger? It was a delightful debate. I'm sure. Such a stimulating subject, Shakespeare. And the debate became very heated, so you slipped poison into Mr. Shakespeare's tea? No, never, not at all. Team Juliet won, that was me, and when I left his room, the flamboyant fellow was fighting fit. I swear it categorically. Mr. Natsume, you often say the same thing about yourself, I've noticed. That you have a cursed existence. I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but I've been here in Great Britain for a year now, and in that time I've learned that it's no place for me. It can be very trying to live in a foreign land and adapt to the ways of another culture. There are foreigners everywhere I look, and they all stare at me, they all laugh. That's the impression I get whenever I go out. It makes me scared to leave my room. Which is why I've become a recluse, but even in my room I find no respite from my fears. I've moved more times than I can remember, and then 1 week ago I moved into Briar Road. But why? I mean, why did you choose that place? It doesn't seem very comfortable. Because the rent is cheap. I have so little money it spoke to me. The rent? Obviously, there's a reason why it's cheap. Because the room's cursed. Cursed? Cursed how? The previous occupant, the man who lived there before I took the room, died there. Oh no. He was only a young man, but one morning he was found dead and no one could explain why.
What are you doing?
Surely, no one would want to live in a room with a history like that. I didn't. When the letting agent recommended the place, I wavered. But I want books, and books cost money. A horrible history is a small price to pay. When I realized it would mean I could buy more books, I signed the lease like lightning. Brave or blinkered. But after I moved in, I soon came to realize what I'd done. I realized how horrible that room's history really was. Gosh, was it really so awful? How did the room's horrible history affect you, Mr. Natsume? What happened? At first, it was just a feeling. The feeling of beady eyes boring into my back, watching me. Do you think that might just have been your mind playing tricks on you? No. My mind doesn't know any tricks. It was someone else. It's been one long nightmare ever since I was given the keys to the place. A nightmare? You've been having bad dreams, you mean? All the souls who died in that room lean over in my sleep and try to strangle me. That really is horrible. And now I come to think of it, it happened again last night too. The very same night that Mr. Shakespeare was writhing in agony from the poison in the body. I was on the verge of being suffocated silently by those miserable spirits in my room. You simply must move out of that room as soon as possible. Yes, you're right, I know it, and that's why I'm already searching for the next room with a history to call home. I think perhaps you should try to avoid accommodation with any kind of history at all. Otherwise, I'm scared that you yourself may become history. Whew, Susato-san knows how to make the man listen. Of course, Mr. Lord of the Manor is worried about the curse on my room as well. You mean Mr. Garradeb? Yes, he knows that if people keep dying there, he'll never be able to rent it out again. Well, that's true. I, for one, wouldn't go near the place. Ah, perhaps. That may explain why the landlord pays so much attention to the gas lamps and his tenants' movements. You mean because he's worried about their well-being? He does seem to have an unusually keen interest in the amount of gas in the pipes. There must be a reason why he keeps such close tabs on the occupants of his let rooms. What do you mean he pays so much attention to the gas lamps? Oh dear, no, it's nothing to do with you, Mr. Natsume. Please forget I said anything. Oh, now you're talking about me behind my back as well. What's important is that Mr. Shamspear isn't in fact dead at all. Once he's come around and he's able to tell us what happened, we'll be able to get you released. Yes, please. Oh, I do hope you're right. Excuse me. Inspector Gregson. I can't have overhearing what you just said, and on that note, I have some good news and some bad news. Oh, which do you want first?
Sounds like Iris.
Always, every time the bad news comes first. When hope is all you have, hold on to it. That's my guiding principle. Right, well in that case, the good news it is. What? Huh? Sorry, but it's just a lot easier to explain everything that way. Then why did you ask me my preference? As you might have heard, the victim, Mr. Shamspear, was just unconscious. He's come round now. Yes, we saw it happen in all its terrifying glory. He's still being treated by the doctors, but we managed to get a written statement from him already. Oh, isn't that wonderful, Mr. Natsumi? Oh, thank goodness, it's all over, then I can leave this somber cell. Sorry, no, that's not on the cards. What? Why, ever not, Inspector? Mr. Shamspear has implicated someone as being responsible for what happened last night. Implicated someone? Oh dear. You don't mean... I'm sorry to say I do. Yes, he pointed the finger at you, Mr. Natsumi.
That's weird.
Arr. Yeah, that is. By sweet poison did he seek it to end my life. That wicked caitiff, Suseki Natsumi. No. So I'm afraid you'll be appearing in court as planned. You'll be wanting to make the necessary preparations. No!
I wonder if this is all a ploy, like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Like, he knew he took it willingly. Because he was debating about Romeo and Juliet, and he was saying, Team Juliet won, and that's when I left, but this might be his way of, like, proving his point.
Yeah, maybe. Because he's not dead, and he seems like an eccentric character. And so, once again, Suseki-san found himself having to get back in the dock of the Old Bailey, whether his room was haunted or whether he was just terribly unlucky. I knew I had no choice. But here's the thing. Even with that, that seems like not so harmful enough, kind of silly, but along the lines of something you might suspect a character here to do. But it's also a case that they don't want people to know exists. So there's something about this case that's crazy, even though nothing feels crazy right now. The following day I would represent him in court and do my utmost to break the curse that blighted him.
His last name is also Shamspear. Like it's a sham?
Yeah. But that's already been his name.
Right.
The Old Bailey. This place always makes me feel strange. I seem to get chills down my spine and break out in a nervous sweat all at the same time. Well, I didn't think I'd be back here so soon. That's my line. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Natsumi. It was only 2 days ago that I was declared not guilty here. Yes, we somehow managed to prove he didn't stab Miss Green in the back. But now this, another morning, another murder, and here I am again in this hellhole. Can't keep coming to court. I'm beginning to think he's right. It really does seem as though he's cursed. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm afraid I have bad news. Oh. Mr. Natsumi, good morning. Yes, morning. So here we are again. Yes, again. Judicial Assistant Miss Mikotoba Esquires was the bad news. Oh dear. You heard, did you? If you come in shouting at the top of your voice, people can't help hearing what you say. Oh, I am sorry. You've done nothing wrong, Miss Susato. Now, what is it? Well, it seems that the prosecution in today's trial will be led by Barak von Zeeks. Von Zeeks? Arr, oh no, oh no, no. The so-called Reaper of the Bailey, the most legendary prosecutor in the land. In the trial 2 days ago, he pursued Soseki-san and I relentlessly. Of course, by the skin of our teeth, we managed to pull through, but still. Perhaps Mr. Natsumi's acquittal in the last trial wasn't the end of the matter, after all. Yes, I know what you're thinking, the legend of the Reaper that says, nothing can save a person in the dock when Lord Von Zieks is the prosecutor. Oh no. That even if the person is found not guilty, the accused will meet a mysterious end one way or another. And we've experienced it firsthand. The man we successfully defended met the most terrifying end after his acquittal, right here in the Old Bailey. Which we'll later find out is someone else. Do I have to put up with those ice-cold eyes boring into my soul again? Cursed by evil spirits and now by the Reaper? Pair of petrifying perils, potentially. Well, if it's potentially, at least you appear to have hope, Mr. Natsumi. Welcome, student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Ah, yes? I'm innocent, you have to believe me. You more than anyone now. Don't worry. I'll be your steadfast ally every step of the way in this battle, I promise. And this promises to be a hard battle, I fear. Well, the trial is scheduled to begin shortly. We should move into the courtroom. Let's go! Oh yes, I forgot to say. I'm afraid he won't be able to make it, Mr. Sholmes, I mean. That's probably for the best. Oh, if he were here, I might be tempted to rely on his help. That could be seen as a weakness. If Lord Von Zieks were to notice, he'd prey on it mercilessly. At least that's my gut feeling. Mr. Naruhodo. You're right. Yes, you're still right. Oh, well said, locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Well said. I swear on this sword at my side on the spirit of Kazuma that it harbors. I'll show him what a Japanese lawyer can do. I'll set you free with honor. Ah, yes.
It's like the same people again.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this battle to be in session. Or, court... He didn't say battle. Yeah, why did I say this battle to be in session? I now call upon the counsels for the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is ready. The defense is ready, my lord. Readiness for the trial, my lord Nipponese friend, is not what the defense needs. What you need is readiness for your inevitable defeat. It's not just in my imagination, it's really there. Lord Von Zieks has such an animosity toward us Japanese for some reason. It was some time ago that he first became known as the Reaper of the Bailey, I believe. These past few years he hasn't appeared in court at all. And now he's back in the courtroom, though for some reason, only when I'm defending. This Reaper, with his curious disdain for us Japanese, is a prosecutor shrouded in mystery. Still, this isn't the time to be pondering that. I have to concentrate on Soseki-san's trial. Furthermore, I now call upon the 6 ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in this trial. Are you ready to fulfill your duty?
15 people.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a feeling this larrikin wasn't innocent before. Ha! I must say that I feel especially ruthless on days when my hat refuses to sit right. Oh, well, I rather like how you're wearing your hat. I think the ruthless look is very fetching, actually. I need to be somewhere at 10 o'clock. I have a very important meeting. Let's make this quick. Couldn't agree more. I need to take home 5 bob tonight, or the missus will be through the roof. Go through the roof. Oh, may the Lord show us all the light here. And
Has he been on every jury?
No, I don't think he was in the last Scared Up case. The Lord will show us the light here and lead us fought to a rifle.
Yeah, he was, because he was saying that he fell down and he has a green coat. Because he was walking home and he slipped on the ice. And, like, we thought that maybe they saw him laying on the ground instead of Miss Green.
Oh, yeah. And he was in the third case with...
He was the doctor.
No, that's the fifth case. But the third case with McGilded, he was in that one?
Yeah, he couldn't hear anything, right?
What the heck? The British jury system is so very different to our own, isn't it? It's quite extraordinary to think that the power of judgment is in the hands of 6 members of the public, and that the judge can only pass sentence when all jurors are in agreement about the defendant's guilt. 6 citizens of London chosen at random, or at least that's the idea. The prosecution would draw attention to the fact that the accused was on trial here but 2 days ago. Accordingly, where possible, the same jurors have been asked to return for duty today. Okay, well, this one actually gives us a reason. Very well, let's commence the trial. Lord Von Zieks, your opening statement, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is not the intent of the prosecution to cast doubt over your past decision. However, the innocent verdict afforded to this eccentric Nipponese before has had dire consequences. Did the accused repent for his wrongdoing in that affair? Far from it, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Instead, he used his freedom to perpetrate a most blood-curdling crime. Only that at the attempted murder of his neighboring lodger, an innocent Englishman. To explain the circumstances of the crime, the prosecution calls its first witnesses to the stand. The detective responsible for investigating the scene and the accused himself. Witnesses, your names and occupations, please. I'm going to drink a bit. Could you read?
Yes, sir. What do I put next? Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective Inspector at Scotland Yard's Homicide Division. Nothing. Soseki Natsumi, from the Empire of Japan. My government ordered me to come here as a student to study your language and culture. Mr. Natsumi? Yes, my lord, sir. I'm quite sure I'm not mistaken that you swore on oath never to set foot in my courtroom again. I remember it as if it was yesterday. The day before, in fact, my lord, but close enough. Believe me, this is the last place I want to be. Inspector, let's hear from you first. Explain the case for the court. Right you are, sir. The incident occurred at the garroted household where the defendant has lodgings. In the ground floor room of the victim, Mr. William Shamspeare. The defendant has already admitted to visiting the victim on the night in question. Mr. Shamspeare collapsed in his room as a result of poisoning by strychnine. When the landlord, suspecting something was wrong, broke down the door. This means, I presume, that the door to the victim's room was locked at the time of the incident. Correct, my lord. It was locked from the inside, making entry to or exit from the room impossible. Although the victim, Mr. Shamspeare, lives to tell tale, he very nearly didn't. The man was halfway to heaven when we first found him. I was the first officer on the scene, my lord, and I have a photographic print here that I took at the time to show how it looked. Yes, a chilling scene indeed. The man looks very much deceased. That's right. Everyone present believed that's exactly what he was. Very well, I shall accept this photographic print as evidence for the court. Crime scene photograph has been entered into the court record. Now then, Mr. Natsumi. Yes. As the defendant, do you have anything to say at this juncture? They're haunted by evil spirits. Good gracious, what's haunted? My lodgings! There's been a whole series of strange happenings in my lodgings. The tenant before me died in mysterious circumstances. A woman was stabbed by no one on the street outside. My neighbor was poisoned, and me. What about me? I've nearly been killed countless times. Killed, Mr. Natsumi? How? Even on that fateful night it happened, when I returned from Shakespeare's room. I lit my gas stove and climbed into bed, but before long the stove went out, and somebody tried to kill me. You must always extinguish all fires before retiring for the night, Mr. Natsumi. But it's so cold! My runny nose would freeze. The point is, I didn't poison my neighbor. Oh, why am I being accused of this? Why is my existence so cursed? Thank you, witnesses. I believe I have reasonably clear picture of the events. If I could raise one more point, my lord. One more. Conclusive point. Conclusive? Go on. Fortunately, the victim, Mr. Shamsir, has regained consciousness after his ordeal, and he has named the true culprit. Exclamation. The poison consumed by the victim was administered in a cup of tea that he drank on the night in question. Tea, my lord, that was brought to the victim's room by the accused. The accused? Good grief. Ardar, Ardar. Yes, that's the crux of this whole case. If Soseki-san is innocent, then why? Why has the victim accused him? Well, Mr. Natsumi, what have you to say to this accusation? That evening, yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shakespeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I bought bottled water especially to make it. And this is the result. Never will I touch tea again. Never. The public pump was frozen, you say? Itchy. That's not information we've heard before. That will do, thank you. Now, according to our laws, the defense must have the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses at least once. Therefore, I call upon these witnesses now for a formal testimony. I presume the prosecution has no objection. None whatsoever, my lord. Good. Then you will give your account of events on the night in question to the court now. Yes, my lord.
Dun dun.
A catastrophic night. It was around 9 o'clock that evening when I visited my neighbor, and I took some tea with me as a gift. We had a heated literary debate over a nice hot drink, after which I went back to my room at around 11. Hard. My tea was completely harmless. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he? Strychnine takes some time to have an effect on the body. Please, people don't keel over immediately after taking it. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands. Yes, I see. It all seems relatively straightforward. Excuse me, but that testimony doesn't raise one rather crucial point, I think, does. Mr. Natsumi claims his tea to have been harmless. Presumably, though. The teacups have been examined for traces of poison, haven't they? Well, as it happens, no. We haven't been able to. Did I hear you correctly, Inspector? Scotland Yard has failed to examine the suspect's substance? How could you have overlooked something so important? Isn't that the first thing you should have done? My learned Nipponese friend, is falsely incensed. What? The inspector said Scotland Yard was unable to examine the tea, not that it was overlooked. Unable? Why? It's simple enough. There was none left, not a drop. Someone must have been very thirsty indeed. With the current scientific techniques, it's not possible to test for poison under such circumstances. We only need a drop, but that one drop does actually have to exist. Funnily enough. The lack of examination notwithstanding, it appears nothing other than tea passed the victim's lips on the night in question. I see, thank you. The matter is clear. Cast your eyes over the jury, my learned friend. What? You can see it in their faces, I'm sure. The recognition of accused's guilt. Your client's fate is all but sealed. In mere moments from now, you will lose, and your compatriot will be damned for all eternity. He's right. I can feel all 6 of the jurors looking daggers at me. But I can't let them beat me down. I won't. Counsel for the defense, proceed with your cross-examination. Yes, my lord.
I need to freshen up. Let's pause the recording and then do that, okay?
We've already been playing for an hour?
Well, technically we've been playing for like 50-some minutes.
Oh,
we paused it before.
Okay.
Alright. We are back. I'm getting a bit of a second wind.
Yep.
We'll see how long it lasts. Catastrophic night. 9 o'clock to visit my neighbor. Had a heated literary debate. Our tea was completely harmless. But someone perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands. That's the extent of the testimony, is it? If I could voice a personal opinion, Mr. Naruhodo, of course, go ahead. Mr. Natsumi is arguing for his innocence so adamantly and so persistently, the Inspector Gregson just brushes what he says aside. It's really quite infuriating. I agree. So we need to find an inconsistency in what the inspector is saying, I think. I'm afraid so. As things stand, the jurors are sure to find Mr. Natsumi guilty. As I see it, what we need to focus on is the poison and the tea. Let's listen carefully to his testimony again. Okay, so let's press him on this. Were you and your neighbor good friends then? No, we weren't friends. Not at all. Not at all. Never. Ever. A simple no would have sufficed. Then, why did you decide to pay him a visit? Mr. Shamspeare fancies himself as having great literary knowledge. As a fellow scholar of English literature, we find much to talk about together. Come now, no Nipponese could understand the finer points of English literature.
It's a bit racist.
And on the night in question, that was the topic of conversation as well, I presume. It was the day of my last trial when he was acquitted. I'd just arrived back in my lodgings. When I ran into Mr. Shamspeare outside on the street, that was at around 6 o'clock. We exchanged one or two pleasantries, but it soon turned into a heated discussion. He was on his way out at the time, though, so I promised to visit his room that evening at 9 to continue our debate. But did I have ill intentions? No, not one, not two, not any, not at all. Never, ever. A simple no would have sufficed, I feel. Then tell the court what did happen when you visited the victim's room. We had a heated literary debate over a nice hot drink. Okay, this mentions drink, so let's do it. A literary debate about Shakespeare's works, I think you said, didn't you? Shakespeare? Very worthy topic of conversation, I must say. Oh yes, my lord. Romeo and Juliet. Who was stronger? It was a profoundly pleasurable parley. Romeo and Juliet? Who was stronger? I know I'm going to regret asking this, but how did the debate go? Well, we both agreed that we would reach a conclusion more quickly with a reenactment, so we battled it out in a Greco-Roman style, naturally. What? Mr. Shamspeare had all sorts of costumes in his room for such a contest. So when you say a reenactment, you mean you were actually in costume. He is Romeo, I is Juliet, and after a vigorous, wild tussle, I, as Juliet, came out on top, a victory I'll cherish forever. I dare not imagine the terrible scene of carnage. The fact remains that it was you who prepared the tea and took it to the victim, correct? I boiled the water in my room and made a pot to take. I'd heard that he was too poor to have tea himself, you see. It's true, there was no sign of any tea leaves in the man's room. I wanted to do something nice, to be friendly. So why is everyone looking at me with such suspicion? My tea was harmless, of course it was. And do you have any basis for that statement, witness? Yes. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he? Yes, there was not a drop of tea left in the victim's room anywhere, was there? That's correct. Anyone would think the fellow had never had a pot of tea before. He must have licked it dry. Which is a pity, because one drop was all he would have needed to analyze it for poison. And you said that you returned home to your room at 11 o'clock, Mr. Natsumi. Yes, definitely. By heaven and earth, I swear it. The landlord was able to verify that as it happens. He confirmed that the defendant went back to his room at 11 that night. And how is the landlord able to attest to this? He, says it was the lamps, I believe. Lamps, Inspector? When tenants return to their rooms and start using gas, the lamps and other parts of the house flicker. Yes, Mr. Garadeb seems to pay a lot of attention to the comings and goings of his tenants. There's only one key to Mr. Shamspeare's room, I know that for certain, so he must have locked the door himself from inside his room. The victim has confirmed that to be the case, yes. So I'm right, my tea was harmless, completely harmless. If you take poison, you die, everybody knows that. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. Oh, what do you mean? Does that take effect?
How does he know it's strychnine? Because there's no tea to test.
Yeah. Hold it! How long does it take for symptoms to appear, then? According to the coroner I was speaking to at the yard, about 30 minutes after the poison is consumed. Then the victim suffers violent convulsions, cramping, and stiffness, and eventually dies from asphyxiation. So there's a 30-minute interval between when the poison is ingested and the onset of symptoms. There seem to be a lot of different types of poison in the world, that's for sure. Oh dear, death by poisoning again. It's always so awful. 30 minutes is a long time. Certainly long enough for the victim to have locked the door behind the accused after he left. You can't deny that, and it further degrades Soseki-san's alibi. I have the medical report from the doctor who examined the victim here, my lord. It spells it out, really. The accused is the only person who could have done it. Very well, the court will add this report to the court record as evidence. Oh yes, I see it here. Delayed onset of symptoms. Great. Let's see. Ingestion of a small quantity of strychnine? Is that what you said?
Strychnine.
Strychnine. Alright. It's actually pronounced how it's spelled. There's no weird thing to it. Strychnine. Toxic effects present 30 minutes after ingestion. High likelihood of the substance, having been mixed with the tea the victim was drinking, but no sample could be obtained for testing. The poisoning incident occurred at around 1:30 a.m. on February 21st. Assessed from the victim's pocket watch that appears to have broken when the man collapsed after the delayed onset of symptoms. No container for the poison was found at the scene.
So that's 2.5 hours after Natsumi left him.
Yeah.
Because he left at 11, so if it's a 30-minute onset, then it should have been having to him at 11:30, right?
Yeah, that should that should be it. Okay, let's see. Hold it! The argument still stands, you say? That is what Mr. Natsumi has been saying, isn't it? The pair of them drank tea together that night, so if there was poison in it, the victim wouldn't have been able to lock the door after the accused left later on. Exactly. Alright, me and my tea are innocent. Sweet and innocent, I tell you. I'm afraid, sir, that doesn't follow. You see, strychnine is a slow-acting poison. In other words, it takes time for symptoms to appear. So you could have left the room up to 30 minutes after the victim drank the tea. But as long as you did that, Mr. Shamspeare could have locked the door after you'd gone. But no, we drank the tea straight away. The battle over whether Romeo or Juliet was stronger, that came after the tea. Do you have any evidence to support that statement? In my great homeland, the Empire of Japan, we have a saying. Drink tea while it's hot. Oh no. I think Susato is going to be... Sure, a proverb will satisfy the prosecution. I'm afraid there's no conclusive proof to support the defendant's assertion. On the contrary, there are sufficient grounds to infer his guilt in this matter. Hey! No. That's the extent. If I could voice a personal opinion... Let's see. 9 o'clock in the evening. After which I went back to my room at around 11.
Objection!
What did you present?
The autopsy or the medical report. The argument still stands, you say. I think not, Inspector. Come again? I think you'll find that you've overlooked a very significant chronological inconsistency here. A chrono what? What are you on about? According to this report, the victim must have consumed the poison at around 1:30 in the morning, and yet the defendant, Mr. Natsumi, left the victim's room at 11. Ah. Yes, that's right. There's more than 2 hours of missing time there. Honestly, you pointing that out actually helped me with that one. In other words, if there was poison in the tea that Mr. Natsumi brought to the victim's room, how could the victim have fallen ill to it 2.5 full hours after the defendant left?
They both have?
The defense's argument is entirely reasonable. How do you respond, Lord Von Zieks?
He has a response, apparently.
Yes, he does. Pray forgive the discourtesy if my mind has wandered. I was considering what cuisine would best complement the contents of my hallowed chalice this luncheon. How could it have happened, you ask? I do hate to shatter illusions, but my Nipponese friend appears to be chasing a phantom idea. A phantom? Is it so hard to imagine that a victim drank his tea after the accused had left? For example, at the time stated in the medical report, yes, at around 1:30. Mr. Natsumi brought the tea with him to drink together with his neighbor, and in Japan there's a well-known saying, drink tea while it's hot. In my country, there's an even more apt saying, there is nothing more refreshing than cold tea. The point is, if there was such a long gap, there may be other ways to explain how the victim came to be poisoned, other possibilities. What sort of possibilities, Counsel? Well, for example, the man could have had another visitor. Another visitor? That's a very bold assertion, my learned friend, from someone who has nothing to substantiate it. Or the victim could have taken the poison of his own volition. You suggest this may have been a suicide, Counsel. Mr. Shamspeare has categorically denied suicide. The idea can and must be discounted. But he could be lying. Something wrong, Lord Von Zieks. I was listening to the sound of the carriage pulling up outside the courtroom. Pray, forgive the discourtesy. Carriage? What carriage? It would seem that the key player in this case has just arrived. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Who, sir, are you? William Shamspeare, my lord. Alas, 'twas I, undone by these bitter events. I am the victim. What? What's he doing here? The prosecution seeks to call this gentleman to the stand. With this testimony, my learned friend's futile resistance will be utterly crushed. You're calling him as a witness? Very well, counsel, I grant your request with interest. I'm curious to discover what the court shall hear from the victim himself. Happy am I, Shamsphere, to regale thee with my tale of woe, my lord. But, I still have my own tale to tell, my own tale of worse woe. I can regale the court with the tale of my perfect innocence in perfect English. That will do, Mr. Natsumi. Let the court now hear from the victim.
Where'd he come?
Alright, so that's Mr. Shamsphere, but who's that other man beside him? Yes, I feel sure that we've caught a glimpse of that man before.
3 times now.
State your name and occupation for the court, please, witnesses. A writer of words so sweet, they do scent the breeze, an inventor of ideas so profound, they compose the earth. The unrivaled poet, the unmatched scribe, William Shakespeare, or the great bard to be recalled to life anew. Too, what a majestic man. Good fellows, I am he who ponders such a miracle, William Shakespeare. Shamsphere, sorry. Oh, and the name's Meterman, Adron B. Meterman. I work for the Altamont Gas Company, East End Branch Office. I remember now. It was yesterday on Briar Road. Oh yes, she's right, it's him. Yes, we spotted him outside Mr. Garrett's house that morning. And he's a gas company employee. What does he have to do with this case? So, Mr. William Shamsphere, you were the victim in this miserable affair, correct? Oh heavens! Oh hell! Do you command me to remember? That sweet poison that didst cross me and cross mine innocent lips? I subpoenaed him for the trial with the doctor's permission, naturally. Hearing the testimony of the aggrieved will have removed any room for doubt from the jurors' minds, I'm sure. Behold, you only have to rearrange the letters of my name to see that me, a seraph, angel indeed. Thus be I noble of mind, sweet of nature, and verily honest of heart, as all heavenly angels be. But there isn't a less contrived meaning in your name, no, not at all. The jurors seem to be very moved by this man, I'm afraid. They're actually taken by this seraph anagram idea seriously. Thank you, witnesses, for your illuminating introductions. But my lord, what's the man next to Mr. Shamsphere doing here? The gas man, I mean. What? Me? Well, now. Allow me to enlighten my learned friend. You recall, I promised, your earlier impertinence when you suggested the victim had another visitor to his room on the night in question. And moreover, that the victim is a compulsive liar. What? No, I didn't quite say that. This young chin-stroker is here to controvert your wild claims conclusively. Is that not so, Mr. Meterman? Hang on, no, I'm just here. I hereby call all your formal testimonies. You will tell us the court as lucidly as possible, without what happened on the night in question. One may smile and be a villain. Yes, it doth pain me. Let the truth be spoken, the truth of that wintry night of my discontent.
That was it? Oh, okay. I was like, what?
The wintry night. The snow lay about. My neighbor did cometh in the evening, bearing a gift of the tea. But merry, bitter was his drink. When he left, I did fall prostrate on my table. Toast was the idea alone. Did pass my lips that late hour, nothing else. I was outside this bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping a close eye on his room. No one else visited the room but that short little round-backed Eastern fella.
Why was he outside at that time of night watching the room?
I don't know. It seems to be very strange. You were keeping an eye on Mr. Shansfield's room all night? That's right. Of course, the bloke's window is all blocked up. Yeah, it is kind of weird, but there's a little gap in the bricks where you see him into the room. So I spent the night trying to keep my teeth from chattering as I peered in through that.
Oh, why?
I don't know. The question is, sir, why? Well now, that's because he's on my list. What a piece of work is a man. Wherefore wouldst thou not stare in wonderment? What are you talking about? This buzzing busybody hath not part in this play. I pray thee, pay him no heed, and no more ado with his tedious words. What you say about me? Calm yourself. This courting is concerned with what happened on the night in question, nothing more. Indeed, that is so. And as the testimony we just heard earlier clearly reveals, there was no one doubt that the accused present at the time who could have carried out this crime.
That guy could have.
Yeah. Well, I believe this may be the final testimony of the trial.
You okay?
I'm tired.
Okay, we can stop.
Yeah, I don't know why I got tired so quick.
All that rice.
Maybe the final testimony? Heck no, I doubt it.
Poor Lane.
Well, this is how we are. Apologies for not going further, but this kind of is what it is.
We're pooped.
We got some good playtime, though. So, looking forward to delving into it and seeing what the heck happened.